What is up, Maniacs? I am Zach, and I am the Milly Maker Maniac. Welcome to our Week 4 recap. Unfortunately, we are not a millionaire yet again. We had a decent run, but ended up missing at quarterback pretty hard. We had a few misses. We were right on a lot of things last week, but we missed in some key spots that prevented us from having a big win. Actually had a pretty negative week, but we'll walk through all of that, go through what we got right, what we got wrong, what we can learn from it, and start moving towards week 5. And tell you what, week 5, stone cold lock of the century. I am taking down the Milly Maker this week, no doubt. Part of that is going to be based on what we learned from week 4. So let's go ahead and jump into the results. We got our asses kicked in cash, lost the whole $950 in cash last week, did not cash it all there. We had 1 out of our 4 lineups in our multiplier ladder that I like to do. I build 4 different lineups based on 4 different starting quarterbacks, my 4 quarterbacks that week, and try to do a ladder build with those lineups across the 3x, 5x, and 10x entries. Unfortunately, I only had 1 lineup that hit the triple up this week, and the rest were duds. Tournament-wise, I didn't do too bad. In the small person GPP, it basically broke even, lost a couple $100 there, and a large field. When we don't hit our main guys, especially like at quarterback, like we missed this week, and our main game stack, which was the Raiders and Bears, we had plenty of Genty, but we had way too much of other things in that game. It just didn't work in our favor. We didn't hit enough lineups because we had so many lineups dependent on that game going off, and it didn't go off. It's pretty standard for a week in GPPs when you don't hit your main thesis on the week, but the smaller tournaments helped us get some back. You don't have to be completely right in those. From a profitability standpoint, we've had a pretty rough go in cash and multipliers the last 3 weeks and definitely the last 2 weeks. Hopefully we can bounce back and get some bankroll builder going on there in week 4. But I hope that you guys find it valuable for me to show you completely behind the scenes on what I'm doing. Obviously, it was a lot cooler in week 2 when we hit. Last few weeks, it's been less exciting showing you my losses each week. But that's just part of playing DFS. You have to have an understanding that you're not going to win week in and week out because we can't predict the future, but we can give ourselves edges against the field to where we put ourselves in better positions to bank those big ones based on how we build lineups. So let's sneak in and look at some of the lineups. We can look at my best lineup here and maybe the most money. Pretty infuriating because I hit on really all the spots you need to hit, where running back, like all of my non-core stacks with my quarterback were on the money. We got Genty, we got Hampton, we got Puka, even Saquon. Like he wasn't good, but we didn't miss that hard. But Tyler Warren was tight end 2, but we missed bad with Jones. Would have helped us a little bit if Mitchell wouldn't have dropped that pass, and if Mitchell would have had that holding penalty, we might have gone to overtime and got some more points there, and then this really could have ran up, but that isn't how it played out. But pretty good lineup. I had plenty of Hampton. I was on the Chargers having a big week. My 3 biggest offenses that I was on didn't have great weeks with the Chargers, Bears, and Raiders. But that's okay. Out of the Chargers game, even though it wasn't as big as we thought it was, there were still 2 studs that came out of it. So we still had plenty of lineups that worked in, but we missed on the other game. So let's go ahead and look at the Milly Maker. Let's pull one of those up here. And let's go and look at the winning lineup. The winning lineup this week is kind of frustrating because there's really no rhyme or reason to this. Like there's a little game stack with the Dunze and Genty, but beyond that, it's just random. Obviously, it hit, but having a Mahomes lineup unstacked is, this. I'm assuming this person isn't a avid DFS player. That's going to happen some weeks where somebody just gets lucky and binks it, but there's really no correlation in this. Pretty random. There were plenty of correlated lineups that could have beat this lineup. Let's go ahead and look at the results from this week. Okay, so here's a lineup that we could have had that would have beat the Milly Maker. We had Penix, Genty, Amarian Hampton, and Cook. These were all core plays for us this week. And then we had QJ, which is that stack with the Chargers, and then Puka and London with Pitts adding on to our stack with Penix, and then you could have the Jaguars D at 2,500. That would have been a total of 240, and that would have taken down the Milly Maker just by a hair. So we could have built a correlated lineup. Frustrating that we were on the Falcons. They were one of the builds I had. What killed me this week, my biggest misses on the week, where I was most of my stacks with Penix had Mooney in it. Mooney pulled his hamstring. So obviously you can see Penix, Bijan, Drake, and Pitts were the ones that you needed out of that. So a little frustrating that Mooney pulled his hamstring because I do think he would have had a big game if he was able to play. But we were there with our Hampton and Johnston. I had this stack in a ton of lineups. One of the things too, Puka, obviously you had to have Puka at 39. But you can see, I've mentioned in the past, when you have a guy over 7,500 at wide receiver, there's only one time last year where a guy went off at that salary where you had to have him and it wasn't tied to a quarterback that was top 3 or better. And this is another example of that. A little disappointed that we didn't get more Stafford. It makes more sense. I only had 3 Stafford lineups. Thought it was pretty unlikely that he was QB1. But the thing about Stafford is he is capable of having those 300-yard games and 3 touchdowns like we just saw, obviously. And you really know where those targets are going. Like, sure, there's Tutu and Devontae are down here, but Tutu just had one play. Devontae had a decent game. But with Stafford, it's easy to stack. Like, you know, it's Stafford and Puka, Stafford and Devontae, a double stack with both of them, or Stafford, Williams, and Puka. And really, Williams isn't going to get that much passing game. Kyron Williams isn't going to get that much in the passing game. So you can pretty much just stack either single stacks with Stafford and Puka, which obviously was the play this week, or double stacks with Puka and Devontae. And that's like all you have to do. So in hindsight, when there's favorable matchups for them, we probably should be building, you know, somewhere in the in the ballpark of 5 to 6 lineups. So that was a bit of a miss, but not too upset with our process. What really killed us when we go look at our core plays, only one of our QBs went off in our core plays. Herbert and Caleb Williams sucked. Goff Jones sucked. Geno sucked, but we had May and Penix, which were usable guys that could have got us there. Stafford, obviously, down here, we missed on. Mahomes, I'm still not convinced on. I think they had 7 to 8 starters that by halfway through the third quarter were out of the game for the Ravens on defense. And even with Mahomes, like, Worthy was wide receiver 9. Like, there's really just 5 guys that you could really use to win a Milly Maker this week at wide receiver, and you had to have Puka. So Worthy wasn't really that great. Most of the time we see ballpark 10 guys around that 20-plus range, but this week was kind of a down week for wide receiver. So I'm not upset about missing on Mahomes. Purdy wasn't really a great stack either. McCaffrey was so expensive. Again, like, we dodged McCaffrey completely this week at 8,500, and even though he's RB7, it was still the correct play to not play him. We played Bijan in our lineups with Penix. Unfortunately, all of the lineups that I had Penix, Bijan, and Drake in also had Mooney, so that killed me. So it's frustrating too, because you see, like, even the lineup that we had that was my best performing lineup this past week, like, if we would have just changed out our Daniel Jones stack for a Penix stack, which we could have done and fit in there, it would have taken it down and took 100K, which is frustrating. We were right there, but we just missed it. So the concept is there. We just had the combinations a little off. 2 of our core offenses were big misses, and the Chargers, there were still 2 solid pieces that came out of it, but that game didn't go anywhere near how we thought it was going to go, which is going to happen week in and week out. Should have been higher on the Rams. Running back, I mean, we had all the core guys in here that we needed. The guy that killed me was Derrick Henry. He was my highest rostered running back, and I still feel confident about that matchup advantage. I think the Ravens just got in catch-up mode too quickly. I think they should have stuck with the run game longer, and they would have been in that game longer. He had, I think, 8 for 46. It's frustrating because I still believe in the thesis behind it. He just didn't get the ball enough. If he got 20 touches, I feel like he would have been in that 25-plus point range, but that's not how it played out. But we hit on Cook, Bucky, Genty, and Hampton, and we hit on them really hard. Bijan at his price, I still feel good about only using him in game stacks and primarily only in game stacks. It was just hard to get to him at that price this week. Wide receiver, Puka, we loved. It was still hard to get to him. Loved Amon-Ra as well. Ladd killed us. AJ killed us. Odunze killed us. Devontae was fine. Tedro was bad. Jamo was bad, but he had multiple scenarios where he'd beat the defense and he just didn't get the ball. So that was a little frustrating that they missed on those. Drake, he was my highest rostered receiver. So obviously that played well. Ricky got hurt. QJ, we were solid on. So we had the guys we needed to have in here. Mooney really hurt me. Egbuka at his price still, it didn't really make sense. We could have had a little bit of that stack of Bucky and Egbuka there, but Hampton and Quentin Johnson was the better stack. So not too mad that we weren't heavy on Egbuka. I mean, all of these guys were in my core plays. The top 4 guys just didn't quite. Caleb Williams, they were either Caleb Williams lineups or Derrick Henry lineups. Tyler Warren, I had 50% of, so happy with that. Goddard was basically pretty much unowned. Let's see what his over here is. Yeah, he was only 2% drafted, so he was only 1 point ahead of Warren. So obviously it would have been nice to get there, but we weren't really on the Eagles this week, so I'm fine with where we were at with Warren. Defense, we were on the Titans, so that hurt us quite a bit. We had some of the Lions and some Texans, didn't really get the Jaguars. If we would have changed our defense to punt to the Titans, we would have fine, but that's just not how it played out this week. I do want to show you my cash lineup. It's kind of comical. It was a Caleb Williams build, which was tough. Let's go to for a double up here. Should be pretty low. It was a pretty bad lineup. Oh, we got to go to the next page for it. That makes sense. Yeah, 10x did not hit. Missed bad on those this week. So we hit on our plays with Cook and Hampton, but we missed badly on the ones where we were taking our stands against the field, the ones that we thought were going to get us paid. Caleb Williams, Derrick Henry, Odunze. Jacoby Myers was chalk, but still missed. And Keenan, I thought was going to be chalk as well, but turned out we were wrong on that. We were chalk on the defense, so it didn't hurt us too bad. Just a little too much confidence in Caleb, but I'll go back to him. I think he's going to have many big weeks this year. I think Ben Johnson is a very good coach, both from an NFL standpoint and is going to be of benefit to Caleb Williams for fantasy football purposes as well. So yeah, big takeaways this week. I got a little too heavy on the game we loved. With the Raiders and the Bears, I pretty much had some version of a stack of that game in every single lineup. And I had plenty of the Genty and Odunze, which was okay. Odunze was wide receiver 10, but there was just such a big gap between the top 5 and the bottom and top 10 at wide receiver that it just didn't play out. I didn't have enough Genty and just lineups outside of that game. So in the future, I'm still going to have plenty of game stacks and want to pursue those, but I'm going to make sure to have plenty of lineups where I have players from those offenses, but maybe not game stack in every single lineup. Because I still think we play this slate out 100 times, that 75 times there's 3 or 4 players above 25 that come out of that game. That there are 3 or 4 players that score above 25 that come out of that game. I think 75% of the time. It just was kind of funky game. Geno never got in a rhythm. He looked really bad, actually. And the Bears defense played better than anticipated, but it still just felt kind of like an outlier outcome. I love that we were on the Falcons. It just sucks that the majority of our Falcon stacks had Mooney in them, so that kind of killed our upside on those ones that we did hit. We were on Puka, but just didn't do enough Stafford. I was primarily thinking that was going to be more of a shootout game as well. So I had Puka and Tyler Warren stacks, but for the most part, when I had both these guys, there was at least one other piece from that game in it, so that those pieces didn't hit. I was expecting 2 or 3 pieces to come out of that game, and only, well, I guess 3 did. I just didn't have the quarterback portion of it. So we missed out on quarterback. We were really on everything else. We just had our combinations incorrect this week. So lessons to learn for next week, and we will have the Week 4 preview coming out tomorrow. I'll do a game-by-game breakdown, and we'll go through once we get all the grades come out. We'll get that spreadsheet built, and we can start looking at how we're going to take down Week 5. A little bit of a frustrating week 4, but we'll bounce back, and we will take it down in Week 5. My friends, have a great day. Smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, and good luck in Week 5. Thanks.